Daniel had one habit he had apologized for his entire life. He cried. Whenever life touched him deeply, his eyes filled before he had time to stop them. A sad movie, a quiet song, or a simple act of kindness. Even a conversation with someone trying very hard to pretend they were okay. For Daniel, tears always arrived before words, and people always reacted the same way. You're too sensitive. You need to toughen up. Why do you take everything so personally? At first, Daniel believed them. He thought there was something wrong with him. Because in the world Daniel grew up in, crying was treated like a failure. As a child, adults told him to stop crying before asking why he was hurt. As a teenager, boys laughed whenever someone showed too much emotion. As an adult, Daniel learned to turn away, blink fast, swallow hard, and pretend nothing had happened. Every time his eyes filled, he felt ashamed. Every time his voice shook, he felt weak. Every time someone noticed, he wanted to disappear. So Daniel tried to become harder. He told himself not to care so much, not to feel so much, not to let little things affect him. But the harder he tried, the more exhausted he became. Because Daniel was not weak. His nervous system was simply built to notice more. He noticed the tiny pause in someone's voice, the smile that looked normal to everyone else but never reached the eyes. The way a room changed after one uncomfortable sentence, the loneliness behind someone quietly saying, "I'm fine." Other people heard words. Daniel heard what lived beneath them. Other people saw faces. Daniel sensed feelings. For years, he believed this was his biggest flaw, until he discovered something psychology has known for decades. Sensitivity is not a weakness, it is a trait. Some brains process emotional and sensory information much more deeply than others. They do not simply experience the world, they absorb it. For someone like Daniel, a sad song did not simply sound emotional. It echoed inside him. A touching movie did not end when the credits rolled. He carried it home. A stranger showing unexpected kindness could bring tears to his eyes within seconds. Not because he wanted attention, because his nervous system responded differently. That was why Daniel cried over moments most people barely noticed. A friend remembering a small detail, a child hugging their father, a sentence in a book that perfectly described a feeling he had never been able to explain. To most people, these were ordinary moments. To Daniel, they felt profoundly human. But this sensitivity came with a price. Daniel did not only feel his own emotions, he felt everyone else's too. When someone tried not to cry, Daniel's throat tightened. When a friend smiled through pain, Daniel felt the sadness beneath the smile. When someone was embarrassed in public, his stomach twisted as though it had happened to him. His body reacted before his thoughts could. This is what many emotionally sensitive people experience. They do not simply witness emotions. They resonate with them. They mirror them. They carry feelings that never belonged to them in the first place. That was why Daniel often came home feeling strangely exhausted. Nothing terrible had happened. No one had yelled. Nothing dramatic had gone wrong. Yet his body felt heavy. All day he had collected invisible emotional signals. The tension in a coworker's voice, the disappointment in a friend's eyes, the silence after someone swallowed their feelings. Other people left those moments behind. Daniel carried them home. And when he was finally alone, the tears came. Not because anyone was watching. No one was. Not because he wanted sympathy. There was no audience. The tears came because his nervous system had been holding too much for too long. For Daniel, crying was never a performance. It was release. Still, he judged himself. He would wipe his face and quietly ask, "Why am I like this? Why can't I move on?" Another thing Daniel never understood was how long emotions stayed with him. Most people recovered after difficult conversations. Daniel replayed them for days. He remembered facial expressions, the exact words, the silence between sentences. He stayed awake, replaying moments, not because he enjoyed suffering, but because his mind was still searching for meaning. People called it overthinking. Sometimes it was, but often it was emotional processing. Daniel wasn't simply reliving pain, he was trying to understand it. That deeper processing allowed him to notice things other people missed. He recognized hurt behind anger, fear behind criticism, loneliness behind confidence, grief behind silence. The same sensitivity that made Daniel cry also made him deeply perceptive. People often felt safe around him. He listened without interrupting, without rushing to fix them. He could simply stay present, because he knew what invisible emotional weight felt like. He knew how damaging it was when people dismissed feelings they never tried to understand. So he became gentle with other people's hearts. Not because he was perfect, because he understood how long one careless sentence could live inside another person. Still, Daniel struggled to see his sensitivity as strength. The world admired people who never cried, people who always looked composed, people who appeared untouched by pain. Daniel wondered if that was what strength looked like. Then one day he asked himself a different question. What if emotional distance isn't strength? What if it's protection? What if the person who never cries has simply learned to disconnect? A wall never cries. A stone never cries. But neither one is alive. Crying means something inside you still responds. It means beauty still moves you. Kindness still reaches you. Loss still matters. Love still has the power to break your heart. That realization changed everything for Daniel. He stopped seeing tears as proof that something was wrong with him. Instead, he saw them as proof that his nervous system was trying to restore balance. Because crying is not only emotional, it is biological. Stress builds inside the body. Sometimes the healthiest response is release. For Daniel, that release often came through tears. After crying, he usually felt lighter, not healed, but calmer, as though something trapped inside him had finally been allowed to leave. Slowly, Daniel stopped apologizing every time his eyes filled. He stopped calling himself too emotional. He still learned healthy boundaries. He still learned not to absorb everyone's pain. But he no longer hated the part of himself that felt deeply, because that part also allowed him to love deeply, to notice beauty, to care, to remember, to be moved by ordinary moments that others ignored. Maybe that is what we misunderstand about strength. We think strength means becoming untouchable, never crying, never breaking, never feeling. But maybe real strength is something else. Maybe it is feeling everything, and still choosing kindness, still choosing love, still choosing to remain open. Daniel did not become stronger by becoming colder. He became stronger by understanding himself. He realized his tears were never the problem. The shame attached to them was. The belief that sensitivity made him less worthy was. So if you are someone like Daniel, someone who cries easily, someone who feels deeply, someone who has spent years wondering why your heart reacts so strongly, maybe there is nothing wrong with you. Maybe your nervous system simply experiences life differently. Maybe your empathy is unusually active. Maybe your emotional awareness runs deeper than most people realize. You are not too much. You may simply be feeling life at a depth others have learned to avoid. And if someone in your life cries easily, don't rush to silence them. Don't tell them to toughen up. Instead, ask yourself, what are they seeing that I'm missing? What are they feeling that I've stopped allowing myself to feel? Because sometimes the person crying is not the weakest person in the room. Sometimes they are the one most connected to reality. Sometimes tears are not evidence of breaking apart. Sometimes they are evidence that the heart is still alive. Daniel spent years believing his tears made him weak. In the end, he discovered the opposite. His tears were never proof that he couldn't handle life. They were proof that life still mattered. And perhaps the greatest strength is not learning how to stop feeling. Perhaps it is having the courage to feel deeply without ever losing yourself. If this story changed the way you see emotional people, subscribe for more psychology insights.